Welcome to the 8th session of CommSessions, where we will be learning about topics like strategic communications with Brenda Saram, who is actually the Director of Communications at Montemorelos University. We will learn strategic digital communication with Pastor Gabriel Moreno, who is in charge of communications in the North Colombian Union. Here is some advice to strengthen your ministry in social networks by Andrea Rincon, who is a collaborator in the area of digital communication in the North Colombian Union, and about strategic advertising in the church by Fabricio Rivera, Director of Communications in El Salvador Union. Stay with us.
This is a fictional story, even if it keeps some real-life similarities. I was suffering on my Facebook account when I stopped to read a post with more than 800 shares and around 500 comments. It read something like this: I am not sending my child back to one of those school trips because my son was supposed to come back at 3, but he arrived very disappointed at 8 p.m. When he finally managed to tell me his bad experience, he told me he was yelled at and ill-treated the entire time. Never mind that their slogan is, our mission is seeing you smile. You encourage physical exercise, but the leader couldn't keep up the pace and didn't know the place very well. It is the reason they got 5 hours behind. On top of that, my son wanted to play soccer at the field, but he was not allowed to. And they were giving a financial talk to 10-year-olds. My son didn't understand a thing, and when they finally were supposed to get a meal and gifts, they found out that the gifts were just card holders. It is clear that they were not expecting to host a group of kids. And the food, you couldn't even make up anything up there. My son couldn't eat because the food was so spicy. And I didn't even mention that I almost went into cardiac arrest waiting those 5 hours because even in this information age, the leaders' batteries went dead. What tips can we learn in order to develop a strategic institutional communication model based on this story? I thought of 7 things that, as I see it, should be the most important. Consistency. Do you know which is the value message of the organization you work for? Which is the way it wants to be perceived? I would like to focus on this issue of perception. I heard an organization communication expert say once that there is nothing truer than perception, and he was right. No matter how much effort we make in saying what we are, the public's perception is what actually counts. So if we announce we're missionaries, health conscious, or groundbreaking, we'd better make sure that we are perceived as such. For a company to be believable, there must be consistency between its corporate behavior and the message it is transmitting. Second, creation of communication culture. Communication as corporate strategy, it is a topic fairly new. Not new for 2019, but new during the last 35 years. What about it? A communication culture is needed, and in order to do so, a lot of patience and hard work is needed. Since it involves a change, and change can bring resistance. It's not that communication didn't exist before, because you have certainly heard that we are always communicating, but it was considered more of a technical enterprise. It was only recently that companies turned to see communication as a strategy, and in the Seventh Adventist Church is becoming more and more important. So this is the time to develop that communication culture in your organization that you have dreamed of. Third, public segmentation for assertive communication. This is important because at college level, for instance, what is important for the student is not important for the employee or vice versa. Or in church communication, what you will discuss at the church board is not the same. You will make part of the announcement, and even if the topic was the same, you must take your public into account to design a way of communicating. Institutional communication theory divides publics in 2 main groups, internal and external. Internal because they are our core workers, who will help us to shape our values, to fulfill our mission, and from whom actually depends the way we'll be perceived. The external is important because it focuses on those we want to connect with. If you're in an educational institution, there are your student prospects. If you're a church, there are the communities you want to reach. If you're a food factory, there are those who purchase your products. So be it internal or external, Both need their own communication channel with a clear message. Fourth, users first. Let's avoid the mistake of assuming that a communication without taking users into account will bring the results we are hoping for. Currently, technology has made the user have an active part in communication. We don't live in the past where companies communicate and users listen silently. That is to say, communication is not one-sided. There are thousands of marketing campaigns which will try to sell us products and services. How do we decide which one to choose among so much competition? Likewise, the users we interact with will issue a decision based on the communication we use with them. To do that, we must get to know them and seek their input. Knowing their preferences, concerns, interests, and needs will help us provide effective communication. Fifth, the SEM identity. In this case, our identity is the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Since 2017, we were introduced to a new corporate image. We were the same church and efforts have already been made. We don't need to be creative as if trying to change or adapt our logo. The same applies to the development strategy in each school. The message to communicate is the same. Working in communication does not mean to work apart from our institution's strategy. Documents prepared by the central administration of each organization are the base for a strategic communication plan. Sixth, planning. We organize multiple events, camping trips, retreats, celebrations, seminars, special days, etc. We get busy most of the time in a world that demands immediacy through its social networks. This is a high-speed train that never stops. In any case, it is important to know that the train route beforehand. Foreseeing things we know will take place. It is something that will make our communication endeavors more assertive, as we will have time to think, produce, and implement clearly. Finally, be prepared for crisis. We never know when a crisis will strike, so being ready for it will help us know how to act when it actually comes. Thus, it is essential we get ready when we're not going through a crisis. As a good communicator in your organization, you should develop a handbook which helps you to be ready when crises strike. For that, my suggestion is for you to watch a video right here in CommSessions Session 6 by Celeste Ryan on how to get ready.
The term strategic communication has become very popular in the last 2 decades. It's because the injection of an agenda and a master plan for the communication. Generally, this master plan includes promotion of a brand, of suggesting actions, specific actions, or promoting a brand, or promoting something that is the objective. Strategic communication is in communication with an objective, with a finality, with a systematic idea. It is not because of many publications or quantity, but with a clear objective with each piece, in each activity, in everything that they do. From digitally, it's to know the different platforms, the publics, the formats. It's not the same to do publication in Facebook and whatever social media, because they need a format, a particular language, a particular adaptation. My communication will not be effective. We lose effort and time. So I suggest you study this social media. A tool to understand the objectives is to get the calendar of publications. This calendar, you should see who's going to publish or what time, what objectives they want, and what social media. And this information in the calendar is supported by the analysis made by each of the social media. This will give you an effective, very important for the corporate communication. This is determined by factors like the objective of that communication, the promotion of a brand, of do evangelism, know each other better in this community. Other factors are the budget, the resources, the opportunities, the channels available, the languages, and the formats. In Google, there are many key elements. I'd like to share 2 of them: keywords and metadata. Social media should bring traffic to the page. The media themselves are not the medium, but it's a way to get to them, to be able to get to the mission. I want to share a few important elements, and this For example, in this, the first thing is to be visible, to get the people to know us as possible. It's a possibility. We also should make conversion. In other words, to have people leave their data with us. And then fidelity is to have a constant closing up with the people, communication with them, that they are not really alone, but there are responses everywhere. I would like to share a particular case of strategic communication. The Open English system, which is very popular in Latin America and in the Hispanic population in the US. At the beginning, it gained a lot of notoriety because of its comic characters. This was a comic character that was just lopsided. He wanted to learn English, and satire could be a two-edged sword. It could take the mark in a different way so that it would not be very serious. Strategic margin had its place. Satire and humor was added, diversity of formats, and you can find articles on vocabulary, pronunciation, orthographic rules, and others, but they're going beyond that. The main reason why people want to study English is to find a better job. So they touch on jobs like how to negotiate a better job, 25 business phrases. So they identified properly the need of the audience. Their strategy in the social media is very dynamic. They publish infographics and brief counsels. If they're trying to learn the social media, they find something tedious, so they use very brilliant colors and attractive graphics that are easy to understand. Above all, it should be well seen in the mobile media, where they discovered that the clientele is very strong. In Colombia, in Venezuela, in Brazil, and Peru, they have achieved a great notoriety, but also confidence. That those strategies have achieved their strategy. It was not just the mark or the economic investment they made, but they understood the situation, that the possible ways that they could reach the media. As a church, we should reach corporate strategic communication in systematical way, so that we can show the mission that the Lord has given. We should be very assertive in fulfilling the mission and use all of these channels in our ways, in our channels, so that message we need to take out should be very efficiently and practically sent to the public.
Being original is one of the most important factors on social media. The public, or followers, like they are known today, want something different and unique that covers a need for something they are looking for, and that also provides a direct benefit. We should also bear in mind that it is important not to bore the user and not be repetitive. This is the key to succeeding in the digital communications, creating surprising formats and innovative ideas that will attract the user to us and give them the confidence to finally become a follower of our content. Maybe you're wondering, how do I create original content? What you can do is navigate the different social networking platforms and extract content that most attracts your attention. Build your idea with the most relevant material and discard content that does not add value to your project. Then gather a group of friends and present your idea. Ask them to be as critical as possible in order to build the content that really contributes value and that followers would like. This way, you will be able to validate the impact that your content will have on people even before you publish it. If you manage to be original with the content you produce for the church, conference, or union's social media, you will achieve success with your followers and positively impact the lives of people. It is important to note that the goal is not only to publish content and that's it. You must find a way to interact with the followers, to create a bond with them so that they feel that you listen and that the content is created especially for them. In the designs you make or in the description you use in the publications, you can ask questions to get the followers to stop and be able to make a personal reflection. It is also important that you answer the comments you receive in the publications or in the chat. This way, the followers feel that they are receiving personalized attention, and you will be able to retain them in your account. You should keep in mind that receiving a like is not only satisfactory for you, it is also so for the followers. When we give them a little heart to the comments and to the publications that they share, we are thanking them for the time they take to see and share our content, and so they feel that we are connected to them. They will feel that we are aware if they like or not what they are saying. After an event in your church, conference, or union, you can use social media to receive feedback from the attendees and try to measure their degree of satisfaction. Use the polls and questions on Instagram because they allow you to receive information in a more interactive way. Remember to share the data you compile with the department in charge of the event so that the next one is better than the previous one. Many social media projects don't work past the 6-month mark, since there is no point in starting with great energy and the best disposition in the world if this is something that's not going to be a constant with time. One of the reasons why the person in charge of a project usually gives up is the lack of results. The key is to understand that the results in social media are not at all immediate, and that is something that may discourage us if we are not clear on the matter. It is necessary that the work we do be correctly oriented with a strategy and that it is continued for a period of time so that we can get the results we are looking for. If you're going to focus on creating images to upload to Facebook or Instagram, decide what will be the days of the week you will be publishing and strive to not fail. If your content will be videos, keep in mind the time that it will take you to prepare a script, record, edit, and finally publish, because being on social media is not simply opening a profile on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, and then waiting to see what happens. Users or followers do not appear by magic nor follow you if you do not offer something of value. And how can we contribute something of value to the user? Offering useful content and making the person identify with the content. This consists of thinking globally and acting locally. Today, in the age of globalization, what happens on the other side of the world can instantly have an impact on this side of the world. It is a question of a feedback mechanism, based on the idea that what happens here today can have an impact there tomorrow. In the local strategy, we must personalize our content according to the customs and necessities of the local consumers, and make sure that the external consumers also understand it. We must take into account the terms we use in a publication, and more so if we know that our public is from other countries. To minimize the margin of error, it is important that we do research before publishing. Talking about an influencer and social media today is much more common, especially when we are faced with planning the presence of our brand in social media. When we use the term influencer, we are referring to a person who transmits confidence on a specific subject for their knowledge and experience, and are very good in generating feelings and establishing a connection with the public or their followers. In other words, an influencer has the ability to change or generate buying or liking decisions within a particular group of followers. This clearly facilitates the arrival of the brands to their potential customers. But how can we identify an influencer? These characters stand out in social media because of the quality of their content and the knowledge they provide on a particular subject. Look closely at the people of your church and identify who exerts the greater positive influence on others, and talk to him or her to become your collaborator at the time of creating content. The key is to understand that not all influencers favor our church, mission, or project. For this reason, it is of paramount importance to identify which figure or person gathers and transmits the value of your project, thus choosing an influencer that can favor us with security.
Dear friends, welcome. Today we will be talking about strategic publicity. And I would like to start with a question. What do you think? It is necessary for our church to do publicity? For some, this word is going to make us think about big trademarks, people that have a lot of experience doing publicity, and you surely would agree with me that this will take these trademarks to be in the minds of people. So when we think about publicity, we sometimes think about, for example, in foods, McDonald's, Starbucks, and we see their logo and their trademark, for example, McDonald's or M. You see it all across the world. It's the same all across the world. And sometimes when we think about shoes, when we see the little check, Nike, and this is publicity for many of years. So we can conclude that all organizations that need to be in the minds of people, they need to be in publicity if they want to be in the minds of their consumers. Doesn't matter how famous they are, they need to maintain themselves in the minds of consumers. So we should define what publicity is, and we could say that publicity, it is the process of communication and has a very special characteristic that it is a controlled communication process that we want to let people know about our products or institutions. The Seventh-day Adventist Church has services, has a special product that we work with, and we want to make it known. Its purpose is to influence, in the case of products, in the buying or the accepting of the products or the services. This is what we know as publicity. We are going to divide this conversation in two sides. First, we're going to talk about the external publicity, and it is also important that we talk about the internal publicity. It is important that when we do publicity, that we have a strategy. When we launch a publicity, and this strategy has a purpose, and so we don't have different strength or different projects, so that we may arrive to the point or to the road that we want to take. Let's talk about, first of all, about the external publicity. In other words, outwards. Think about the Adventist Church. We can talk about the different signs and that we have in front of the churches, banners that we create when we have different activities and we march on the street. And so we have health activities or anything like that. Or it could be the logo of our church in a t-shirt. It could be a bumper sticker. Sometimes we don't use them as much, but you can have them there. So nowadays, especially, social media publicity. And before we continue, something is important. So a couple of minutes before, we talk about the uniformity of the trademark and the form and the colors and the different areas that we use. Are we doing the same thing as an Adventist church? Let's talk about the internal publicity, which is the one that was inwards. And now we have to think about that within the church, we do publicity. Who are we doing publicity to? Who is our clients? It's very easy. Our departments, the youth department, the children's department, the women's department, the stewardship, and we can talk about all of these departments. And all these departments need to develop different events, and they may come to the communication department in order to create this publicity campaign. It is necessary that we take care of our corporate image when we do publicity. It is necessary that we identify ourselves the same way all the time, so our publicity it becomes effective. It is necessary to begin using a very important tool. It's a good tool, but very important. It's brief. I could say that brief is like for an engineer, the plan, the base on top where everything is going to be created. In order to do publicity, we have to use brief. There's not a specific model for a brief, but we should answer questions like, what is my objective? Who is my target? Who do I want to reach? What is the tone of the communication? We need to define it. Is it institutional? Is it informative? How am I going to create it? All of these questions, it is important that we determine them before we begin. How much is it going to cost me? And of course, we have to remember that the cost needs to be determined not only by money, but by time. And also we have to define, why are we doing it? There's a very practical tool that it helps us to define our actions when we do publicity. So in English, it's very easy to remember. It's called SMART. S for specific, M for measurable, A for attainable, R for realistic, and T on time, based on the time that I want to realize it. Do not forget these details when we want to do publicity. And after doing these, and remember, these are very necessary, we need to conclude that behind our actions, there needs to be a strategy that has been planned. In other words, actions that have been analyzed and they have objectives that are for short and long term. We need to identify our goals and to define the strategies that we need to develop in order to do the right publicity. Our church needs to do publicity inwards and outwards. Let's put it in practice.